This is part 2 of the recording about the other Upanishads. And before I got disconnected from my recording, I was about to say that this is still source book pages 57 to 77 that we're looking at. And I still encourage you to go back to the primary text than to simply listen to what I say or what I normally say, because that will play a very important role also in your understanding of the philosophical contributions of the text. I will resume where my recording was cut off, and that was the significance of the passage. And we were talking about the philosopher king and how Krishna in Bhagavad Gita will eventually appear as the ideal philosopher king. And there also of the frame Satyasha Satyam, which will indicate the deeper dimension to the world that we see. And therefore, the recognition that things are not simply physical or neurological, but also philosophical. Thus, here the senses are withdrawn from the outer world and awareness seems to reside in the pranamaya kosha, the nervous network of the human being. So if we think of the mind as a cognizer, a part of its activities to give cohesion to all the sensory impressions, and also at the same time to interpret it so that we may understand it. So the verses of this Upanishad suggest that a similar process is taking place with respect to our neural impressions that are also interpreted in the form of a dream. And here we see Yalnavalkya. This is a good portion of the Upanishad. Is undeniably dominated by the personality of Yavnavalkya. He tells his wife that he will leave her all his wealth to renounce the world and begin a life of exclusive meditation. This is seen as a natural event that comes from maturity and after one has gone through various phases of life and its teachings. So the Upanishad refrained from making compartmental divisions either to society or to life. And that's also something to understand. And as we were saying, Yalnavalkya has a wife, and the name of the wife is Maitreyi. No? So Maitreyi replies, "What will I do with wealth? Teach me that which will enable me to transcend death." And Yajnavalkya was delighted, for he now has found a fit pupil. And so he will say, "Verily, it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is dear to the wife, but for the sake of the Atman that she loves him. It is not for the sake of the wife that the husband loves the wife, but for the sake of the Atman that she loves her. No one loves a thing for that thing's sake. It is only for the sake of the Atman. This teaching must first be heard, then reflected upon, and then meditated upon. When the Atman is seen, then all becomes known." So why do we love anything? Why do we even love at all? It is because the light of the Atman animates it. The beauty that shines through the eyes is the beauty of the Atman. Thus, the beauty that we enjoy is the bliss of the Atman, of the Brahman, even though we are not aware of it. Our difficulty arises when we try to narrow the experience through only one person or only one thing. That's why Vivekananda further explains, as soon as you attach to anything in the universe, detaching it from the universe as a whole, from the Atman, there comes a reaction. With everything we love outside the self, grief and misery will be the result. If we enjoy everything in the self and as the self, no misery or reaction will come. this is perfect bliss. So how to gain a cosmic perspective from this? Yajnavalkya teaches Maitreya, as when a drum is beaten, one is not able to grasp the external sound. But by grasping the drum or the beater of the drum, the sound is grasped. Similarly, when one grasps the pure self, all things and beings become known. They have no existence apart from the self. All knowledge is breath of the eternal. As a lump of salt thrown into the water becomes dissolved in the water, and as one cannot separate it, so also the infinite is mingled with all that you see. Everything is permeated with intelligence. The universe arises out of that and goes back to that. Maitreya's question is interesting. Maitreya asks, what will become of individuality when this happens? What will become of individuality? Or what becomes of individuality? It looks like it will disappear. Will there be then no one to love? No one to recognize? Yajnavalkya answers that. He says, as long as there is duality, one sees the other, one hears the other, and so forth. But where everything has become the self, who is seen by whom, who is heard by whom, the pure awareness that reveals all, by what shall it be revealed? This is the super conscious state that we've been talking about in the first video on the remaining Upanishads. It reveals consciousness, individuality is subordinate to that. What is the myth of individuality here? What exactly do we mean by individuality? Upon closer examination, we find it is a myth. The body is constantly changing. The mind is constantly changing. Medical science informs us that the body is composed of about 10 raised to the 12 power cells. And these cells have different lifespan. Blood cells are changing every second. The surface of the cell linings of the stomach change every few minutes. These cells are completely transformed every few hours. Stomach lining cells live only about 2 days. A skin cell lives about 2 weeks. A red blood cell lives about 2 months. Liver cells live about 2 years, whereas the heart, brain, and nerve cells last a lifetime. Vivekananda elaborates, the body and the mind are continually changing and are in fact only names of series of changeful phenomena like rivers whose waters are in a constant state of flux, yet presenting the appearance of unbroken streams. Every particle of the body is continually changing. No one has the same body for many minutes together, and yet we think of it as the same body. So with the mind. One moment it is happy, another moment it is unhappy. One moment strong, another weak, an ever-changing whirlpool. That cannot be the spirit which is infinite. Change can only be in the limited. These are old delusions, however comfortable as they are, to think that we are limited beings, constantly changing. Janaka and Yajnavalkya will also demonstrate this. King Janaka held a royal court and invited learned scholars for a philosophical debate. And he offered 1,000 cows as the prize for the winner of the debate. Yajnavalkya enters the court and sits next to the other sages, and the debate begins. A sage stands up and asks, "What is the means of overcoming death?" Yajnavalkya replies saying, "By fire, by speech, we overcome death." Speech is symbolic of the word or the miracle of language. Language is the means for gaining higher knowledge. Fire is symbolic of the will. Thus, by combining learning and the will to learn, one overcomes death. In the course of the debate, Yajnavalkya is asked a series of questions and he emerges victorious in the discussion. The assembly seems to consist of both male and female sages. At some parts, the dialogue is reminiscent of the Kina Upanishad. We read, "He who dwells in speech, yet is within speech, whom speech does not know, whom body is speech, who controls speech from within, that is the Atman. He who dwells in the eye, yet is within the eye, whom the eye does not know, whose body is the eye, who controls the eye from within, that is the Atman. It is unseen, but it is the seer. It is unthought, but it is the thinker. It is unknown, but it is the knower." King Janaka is pleased with the debate and comes to reward Yajnavalkya. And King Janaka asks, "Did you come here for cattle or for philosophy?" The sage replies, "For both. But before I accept your award, I would like to hear what your teachers have taught you." Janaka says, "I was taught that word is Brahman." And the sage expands, "It is true that word is Brahman, since the legacy of learning, first from the mother, then the father, and then the sages, is through the power of the word, the power of sound, the Sabda Brahman. The organ of speech is its abode, and the space its support. Meditate on sound as pulsating with knowledge." Then ensues a long discourse between Yajnavalkya and Janaka, which is a series of meditations. When the sun has set, the moon has set, the stars have set, the fire is out. What illumines the world? Speech. Sound illumines the world. And when that is not there, what illumines the world? It is the light of Brahman that illumines the world. Consciousness is the ultimate source of light. Even when all sensory inputs are diminished, consciousness persists. Awareness persists. This is Helen Keller. In her autobiography, The World I Live In, Helen brings this message to us with impressive force in the chapter entitled The Seeing Hand. She writes, "My hand is to me what your hearing and sight are to you. The hand is my feeler with which I reach through isolation and darkness and seize every pleasure, every activity that my fingers encounter. In all my experiences and thoughts, I am conscious of a hand. Whatever moves me, whatever thrills me, is as a hand that touches me in the dark, and that touch is my reality. The delicate tremble of a butterfly's wings in my hand, the soft petals of violets. My world is built of touch sensations, devoid of physical color and sound. it breathes and throbs with life. Remember that you, dependent on your sight, do not realize how many things are tangible. A tangible object passes complete into my brain with the warmth of life upon it and occupies the same place that it does in space. For without egotism, the mind is at large as the universe. The silent worker is imagination, which decrees reality out of chaos. The seeing hand. Apart from its literary beauty, this passage is important for us as students of philosophy. It shows that in our waking state, with sensory impressions coming from many directions, the impressions are revealed pell-mell by our brain. The imaginative faculty gives order to these diverse impressions and fashions some view of the world. Most of this is happening too fast for us to listen to the inner symphony being played. Following the Upanishad, if we withdraw the mind from the outer world and observe within, we find a subtler layer of experience. In the case of Helen Keller, the energy expended through the faculties of sight, speech, and sound have been eliminated, and she finds a still richer world revealed through the sense of touch. Equally amazing is that the mind can still fashion through imagination an idea of the world outside that gives her meaning. Yajnavalkya continues his discourse. Beyond the waking, dream, and deep sleep states is Brahman, one without a second, beyond duality. When one is healthy, wealthy, and has lavish enjoyments, that is said to be the highest bliss of human beings. But the bliss of the knower of Brahman is the greatest. According as one acts, according as one behaves, so does he become. As is his desire, so is his will. As is his will, so is the deed. Whatever deed he does, that he attains. When all the desires of the heart are cast away, then he attains Brahman. They who know the life of life, the mind of the mind, realize Brahman. Through the mind, it is perceived. In it, there's no diversity. Let the seeker of Brahman practice the means to wisdom. Let him not reflect on too many words, for that only gives rise to weariness of speech. So whatever you enjoy and find dear in this world is through the bliss of Brahman. Meditate on physical symbols as Brahman. Higher than these is the formless. Meditate on that too as Brahman. Mental abstractions such as forgiveness, joy, harmony, humanity, social justice, power, truth, meaning are all without form. The states of consciousness are a form of Brahman. Withdrawing the mind from the outer world and focus on the inner to realize Brahman. Meditate on the heart, radiating its network of veins and arteries like the sun radiating light and heat. As a spider is limited in its movements to the threads of the web it has spun, so also the individual experiences the world only through the network of nerves. This is the spiral staircase of meditations to consider. My screens again, no? Hanged. And most probably it's moving still from your end, but let me